Good evening, folks. It's Doc Severson for the ReadySetCrypto OMNIA newsletter market update for Tuesday, the 11th of February. Okay, across the board, we have some really nice action here. I mean, just about everything we're looking at looks really good. If it's not exploding to the upside, it's flagging out very nicely. Like Ripple, this is exactly what I want to see from Ripple, building up a small little flag. And if we throw the shop on here, if we add the RSI Laguerre with the embedded fractal energy on top of this, eventually you can see that this type of price action restores energy very, very nicely. Okay, so across the board, we're seeing really good stuff here. And some of these are just outright exploding. Like Chainlink is saying, good night, goodbye, I'm out of here. I want to go higher. And this is all very nice to see. Even basic attention token, things like this. And I think a lot of this was maybe driven by some of the Fed comments, believe it or not. The Fed giveth and the Fed taketh away. Well, today was the Fed giveth. So let me go back to a price action chart and let me bring up the topic of the day, which I'm going to talk a little bit more about tomorrow in the public space. But let's talk about the problem from 2018. The problem from 2018 was so many people jumped on board up here and said, I am a committed hodler. Yeah, I'm in this for the long term. And then the price did this kind of thing. And then they said, oh, hey, where should I put my stop so this doesn't happen to me? And you have to understand that those are two different approaches. If you say that you're a committed buy and hold hodler, then your approach is more to say, hey, I don't care about this stuff because I'm going to take a long-term approach. I'm going to look at this from a monthly log chart like this and say, this is just noise. I really don't care about this. In fact, I'm going to use these pullbacks as an opportunity to add additional position size. That's one end of the spectrum. And I realize that not everybody fits into that spectrum. Not everybody has the time to fit into that spectrum. You know, can you lose 2 years of your life to sit through this and add to this and take the longer term view? And not a lot of people can, quite honestly. And that's okay. There's no judgment there. Everybody's got to find a method that works for them. But you have to understand that what I just talked about is totally incompatible. So if you're out there freaking out every time that the price drops, then the longer term approach is just not gonna, it's just gonna be so fatiguing for you that perhaps the notion of just trading might be a better idea. And this is what works for, and this is what's more natural for me as well too. Even though I do have some stash and buy and hold, traditionally, most of my investments are swing trades where I don't really care what happens from one day to another, to another, to another. As long as it moves, that's fine with me. So swing trading is just more of it's a completely different style where you're just looking to get your fair share. You're looking to catch the meat of the move, and this obviously is an exception, but here, like all these swings, you could still play along in these swings as long as you don't get overcommitted to your move, because what goes up comes down very quickly in a bear market. And so now as we get into the next leg of the bull, we have to consider what happened at this time last year. Look, really strong move, and you had to be very judicious with your stops. Otherwise, you're going to get knocked out on some of these stop runs. You're going to get knocked out on some of these stop runs. So this is the dichotomy that you play is, okay, I want to stay in for these great big long runs. And that's one way to do it. But you have to determine that at the very beginning of the trade, because these big long runs will eventually at some point throw enough volatility. And it's so painful to watch the price, you could be up for 14,000 one day. The next day you're down to 9,600 and you've given back so much, and then boom, you're stopped out and you're like, oh, why couldn't I have just sold into strength? Well, no, you didn't say that. You said that you were going to try to be a trend trader and you're going to hold this thing forever and you weren't going to use a stop. So here's my point, is that you've got to determine what you want to do ahead of time and then just make it mechanical. So one of the ways that I do this is through the trend trading, right? So we have the trend trading strategy where we're just playing within the envelopes and we don't really care. And as long as the envelopes support what we're doing and we're not being stopped out. So I've got this orange line here, which is kind of the trailing stop behind there. And a lot of people will look at this and say, yeah, but, I don't want to give up all of this. That's too much to give up. Well, that's true because that represents a 10-day trailing low. That's a 10-day trailing low. And there might be quite a delta there to give up. So you might not want to be considering the trend trading. Trend trading is one of these strategies for getting on board something like this is a great example, Ethereum Classic. No way anybody takes this entry, but if you did, you'd be way up on the position right now. Way up there. That is the only buy point at this point so far in this coin on Ethereum Classic. Buy point was about 550 and now it's sitting at 12. What you also see is the stop is fairly close to that. This is the advantage of tight consolidation. That's what it does. It builds up a lot of power for the next move, keeps the stop close, but you can't do that with every coin. So for people that are asking me, like they want to jump in on the spot and they want to ride this thing as long as possible, this is probably the right strategy for you. And then it's just a matter of, as I go into the program, determining what you want to use for your stop. You can use a 20-day low for your stop, right? So a 20-day low is going to be down here, probably underneath this pivot instead of back here. And that's going to give you a lot more room. And one of the things that I have learned through trading every single day intraday is like, if you want to be in for the really super long runs, you've got to give these things a lot of room. There's no way that this stop makes it through the next pullback. No way. It's too tight. So you've got to be okay with this level of gain at this point, because more than likely this thing is going to get hit, because this is a 10-day stop is a relatively tight stop. If you want to be in for the super, super long runs, if you want to be in for the 2017 type of Bitcoin runs, let's go back to here again. You've got to give these things more room to work. Notice how each one of these would have been knocked out. You would have been knocked out here. You would have been knocked out here, here. You're in here. You're knocked out here. You're not in. You gotta give up all this room here from 63.48. Your next buy point's at 8,000, and it's killing you, right? It's killing you because it's like, oh man, I was way up on this thing. I was up to 8,000, and now I get stopped out at 6,000. And so if you want to be in for the long runs, you've got to give these things more room. Look how much room that this gives you. The other way that you can handle things, so if this is too much wear and tear on your psyche, is to give back all of that during the pullbacks, then what I would recommend is to going into swing trading. Swing trading can be particularly effective if you're using like futures contracts. You can kind of dial in what you want. You have a little bit more leverage to work with. So you can take a swing like this, like maybe this long, which is only worth a couple hundred points. This goes from say 8,400 to 9,400. So it's worth 1,000 points. And if you had one full Bitcoin of spot, that would be worth $1,000 to take that. So how many people are going to put a whole Bitcoin into a spot position? Not that many. But you can take 100-to-1 leverage position. You can be putting your stop down to there. This is your risk. And instead of putting down an $8,000 position for that, you're maybe risking $100, which is a lot more palatable for something like that. You're risking $100 and you're looking to make significantly more than that for that position. The nice thing too is that you don't have to worry. I mean, especially if you're able to get in and get out within a day or so, then you're in cash and you just simply wait for the next setup. So this has got to match your personality, because obviously this is going to be, you're going to have more trades you're going to have more trading activity. You're going to have potentially more losers looking for these specific swings. Sometimes you're going to swing and miss. Maybe you're going to enter here. Oops, I got stopped out. And you have to stick with it and say, okay, that's fine. Didn't risk that much, didn't lose that much, but I'm going to take the next one. And you're looking for that big reward to risk entry. So guys, remember, rule number one of risk management is to determine what your stop is ahead of time. Determine what your exits and your stops are ahead of time. And you can't do that if you don't know what your strategy is. You cannot figure this out on the fly. Don't try it. That's what all the other retail traders are doing. They're entering a position and then saying, well, it'll work out. I'll just figure out what to do on the fly. Don't be part of the herd. Determine your strategy ahead of time. And maybe what you're going to do is you're going to use some of your capital for swing trades, and some of it you're going to use for trend trades, or you're just going to hold, or you're just going to dollar cost average. That's okay. Break it up into different pieces of the pie. Manage it separately with the correct exit rules. Okay? Let me know if that makes any sense. Thanks for listening. See you tomorrow.